Hey guys, January 14th, Sunday, 2024. It's like 24 degrees outside. Windy, snow squalls. Yeah, welcome to New York. So I thought what a better day than to spend in the shop, and I wanted to do a little bit of forging. These are hammer hooks. I made these a long time ago. Used a couple just been sitting on the shelf, and after this initial design, which pretty much are all the same, I thought, you know what, I can do better and I can make them easier to use. If you don't know what a hammer hook is, basically it's a reusable hook that, especially for like barns and things like that, for hanging buckets or horse tack or whatever, you basically hammer this into a stud, a wall, whatever you need, even outside for maple syrup, buckets, hanging your buckets. But what I found was the initial design that I made, this spike here is just way too long and not quite pointy enough. So I'm going to shorten this up probably by half. And the nice thing about this is you hammer it in place. It's got a lot of weight-bearing ability, but when you're done with it, you grab it, spin it, and pull it right out, and you can put it wherever else you want. So we're going to change this design a little bit, maybe make it a bit more ornate, and I just thought I'd bring you along for that. I'm going to do this one now and a bunch off camera. I have some uses for them, so I'm going to fire up the forge, get this hot, and straighten it out and kind of start from scratch. So we'll be right back. So we're kind of getting this straightened back out. I'm going to get this hot again and draw this out to a sharper point. I may touch it up on the grinder. And then we're going to straighten out this end. Get that. I want to make this flat so I can put a small scroll on it. So we're underway. This is what I was talking about with the snow squalls, wind, cold. Yeah, once again, welcome to New York. Alright, so we're fairly straight again. Another heat each end. We'll draw this out to a point, better point, and then we're going to flatten this out so I can do the scroll, and then we're going to decide on how deep we want our point to go, and then put our curve in it. And these don't take long to make, but they're a really cool project. This was made from round stock, but I kind of like to have the point square. The reason for that is that it's less likely to twist once you hammer it into whatever wood or medium that you're going to, you know, employ this in. So we're going to continue to draw this out, and I really don't want to get too much in there, as you know, that'll increase the chances of the tip breaking off when you're driving it. Alright, and that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to heat this back up, clean it up a little bit, you know, uniformity that is, and then I'm going to put my 90 on it. And we still have the Whisper Mama Forge from NC. And actually this hammer that I'm using is an NC Cavalry rounding hammer, and I really like this hammer. Now, mind you, these are meant to be rustic, in my opinion anyway, so hammer marks, totally acceptable. It definitely lets people know that they're handmade. And that tap on the anvil, it's that. When I went to farrier school, my farrier teacher was 70 plus years old, and he had this belief that, I don't know if it was really a belief, but a tradition, that banging on the anvil drives the devil away. And he also said hammering on cold steel attracts the devil. So in his, not memory because he's still alive, but in his tradition, I kind of do the same thing. Okay, so now I want my 90 about half of what it was on the one that I showed you in the beginning. So right about here is where I want to have that. And what you want to make sure you do is when you put your curve on this, you want to make sure that your curve doesn't come up so high that you can't strike this with a hammer. It would be kind of useless to have your curve, like, let's say, coming out up here. You want to make sure you have enough room to be able to strike this with a hammer when you're putting it in, again, whatever medium that you're putting it in. Alright, so I like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to heat up the opposite end, flatten this out, draw it out, and get ready to make the scroll, and then I'm going to put my bend in this. So I'm going to want to draw this out flat so that it's in line with the point. And that's kind of why I bent this point over first. And if you don't want all these hammer marks visible, you can do overlapping blows that will, for the most part, get rid of the hammer marks. But as I said, I may decide to sell some of these, so I want people to know they're definitely handmade and not mass-produced. right, now I'm at the point where I want to be with the scroll end. So we're going to start the scroll. And this is a little thick, so it's not super easy to scroll. But again, I want people to know that this was handmade. Okay, and for a lack of a better term, that's actually what I'd like to see for the scroll. Doesn't need to be super crazy. It is basically a hammer hook. Alright, so now you want to make sure that you make your bend opposite the point, because obviously the point's going to be into the wall, and right about there should work. Close that up a little bit. Actually, we'll close it up a little more. Let's make it look symmetrical, I guess. Sorry about the fan noise. It is cold out, and I've got the wood stove going in here. Trying to keep things warm. And it's over 50 degrees in here. Make sure we're lined up. We look pretty good. So this leaves us plenty of room to be able to hammer this into whatever you're going to hammer it into. We have a little bitty half scroll, I guess I'd call it. But seriously, I want these to look handmade and people to believe that they're handmade. My business website, I'm probably going to start batching these out and selling them on there. I'm going to heat this up one more time and get everything square, and then we're going to quench it. And for quenching, for this kind of stuff, this is mild steel. I'm not sure that I mentioned that. But I will quench this in used engine oil. Oil changes that I've done on my truck, on the tractor, and so forth, I store in a 5-gallon pail. And that's what I use to quench this kind of stuff in. So let's get this hot, straighten it out, and then we're going to go to the quench and we'll be done. Alright, so we're cleaned up. Everything's square, nice and straight, level, perpendicular. Not really perpendicular, but it looks good. So now we're going to bring it back up to temp and quench it. And what I was saying about I really want these to look handmade is, believe it or not, when I went to farrier school, we started off, it was a 16-week course. We started off with a bunch of different metals, making our own tools. So this I made from a leaf spring, and you really wanted it to look perfect. So there's a ton of time into this, but it's what is possible. And basically this pritchel is used for punching nail holes in horseshoes. So obviously you'd have your shoe red hot and you would punch out your nail hole. But I want these hooks to look like they've been handmade. Some of the places that I sell on, I've read some reviews on similar products, and the one that really got me the most was some woman bought, I believe it was a steak flipper. She said you can definitely tell it was handmade. There's hammer marks and there's imperfections, and I couldn't be happier. So I want mine to look like that, handmade. So we're going to warm this back up. We're not going to get it stupid hot. We're going to get it red, and then we're going to let it cool down just a bit, and then we're going to quench it in the used engine oil. And then I'll show you what we do with them when they're done. All right, so we've got the business end of this hot, and I kind of rely on the magnetization. When it's hot enough so the magnet doesn't attract, you're ready to quench. Now my tip is getting cold, so we're going to quench this now. And the other cool thing about using used engine oil in obviously non-food related items is that it bakes on this nice black finish. And it keeps it from rusting out, you know, over a certain period of time, that is, not forever, but quite a while. Unfortunately, the part that you're going to hammer on, you're going to knock that finish off, but the rest of it's going to look good for quite some time. So let me clean this up with a rag, and I'll show you what we do with it next.